Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm free. Oh, in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. My life. Woo! Thought I had to do it all for myself. I got my voice back. Didn't know the grace of God was sufficient. Didn't know the love of God was at hand. But now I can say if you are discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, what do you gotta do, Shabbat? You gotta let it go. Gotta let it all go. Let it all. And this is what you have to say. I release and I let go. Let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see that light. Free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. Woo, that's in the Spirit. That's in the Spirit. Amen.
You know I have a Pentecostal background, right? So, okay. Some days you're just going to get it. So, as I mentioned, I'm always happy to see the holidays come, happy to see them go. And I've heard this thing years ago, and I've just indulged me this morning. This is by John Julius Norwich. It's the other side of the 12 days of Christmas, and this is someone else who is happy to see them go. The first day of Christmas. Oh, and by the way, these letters come from a proper young English maiden. I'm not going to inflict my fake English accent on you. Just imagine it, okay? First day of Christmas. My dearest darling, that partridge in that lovely little pear tree. What an enchanting, romantic, poetic present. Bless you and thank you. Your deeply loving Emily. The second day of Christmas. My dearest darling Edward, those two turtle doves arrived this morning and are cooing away in the pear tree as I write. I am so touched and grateful. With undying love, as always, Emily. Day 3. My darling Edward, you do think of the most original presents. Whoever thought of sending anybody 3 French hens? Do they really come all the way from France? It's a pity we have no chicken coop, but I expect we will get one. Thank you anyway. You're lovely. Your loving Emily. Fourth day of Christmas. What a surprise. 4 calling birds arrived this morning. They are very sweet, even if they do call rather loudly. They make telephoning impossible. But I expect they'll calm down when they get used to their new home. Anyway, I'm very grateful. Of course I am. Love from Emily. Day 5. The postman has just delivered 5 most beautiful gold rings, 1 for each finger, and all fitting perfectly. A really lovely present. lovelier in a way than birds, which do take rather a lot of looking after. The 4 that arrived yesterday are still making a terrible row, and I'm afraid none of us got much sleep last night. Mummy says she would like to use these rings to wring their necks. She's only joking, I think, though I know what she means. But I love the rings. Bless you. Love, Emily. Day 6. Whatever I expected to find when I opened the front door this morning, it certainly wasn't 6 huge geese laying eggs on our steps. Frankly, I had rather hoped you would stop sending birds. We have no room for them, and they have already ruined the croquet lawn. I know what you mean. I know that you meant well, but let's call a halt, shall we? Love, Emily. On the 7th day of Christmas. I thought I said no more birds. But this morning I woke up to find no less than 7 swans all trying to get into our tiny goldfish pond. And I'd rather not think about what happened to the goldfish. The whole house seems rather full of birds, to say nothing of what they leave behind. Please, please, please stop. Your Emily. On the 8th day of Christmas, frankly, I think I prefer the birds. What am I to do with 8 milkmaids and their cows? Is this some kind of sick joke? If so, I don't find it very amusing, Emily. Day 9. Look here, Edward, this has gone far enough. You say that you're sending me 9 ladies dancing, but all I can say is that by judging from the way they dance, they are no ladies. The village is not accustomed to seeing a regiment from shameless hussies with nothing on but their lipstick cavorting around the green, and it's Mummy and I who get blamed. If you value our friendship, which I do less and less, kindly stop this ridiculous behavior at once, Emily. Day 10. As I write this letter, 10 disgusting old men are prancing about all over what used to be our garden before the geese and the swans and the cows got at it. And several of them, I notice, are taking inexcusable liberties with the milkmaids. Meanwhile, the neighbors are trying to get us evicted. I shall never speak to you again, Emily. On the 11th day of Christmas. This is the last straw. You know I detest bagpipes. The place has now become something between a menagerie and a madhouse, and a man from the council has just declared it unfit for habitation. At least Mummy has been spared this last outrage. They took her away yesterday afternoon in an ambulance. I hope you're satisfied. And on the 12th day of Christmas, from the law office of G. Creeps, solicitor at law, Sir, our client, Miss Emily Wilbraham, instructs me to inform you that with the arrival on her premises at 7:30 this morning of the entire percussion section of the Liverpool Orchestra and several of their friends, she has no course left open to her but to seek an injunction to prevent you from importuning her further. I am also making arrangements for the return of much assorted livestock. Thank you for your indulgence. Now we're done with Christmas. Okay. So today we're beginning a 4-part series on the 5 basic principles of unity teaching. I'll be speaking today on principles 1 and 2, next week on principle 3, which is the law of mind action, how it works, how the one presence, the one mind reveals itself in our lives. Week 3, but principle 4, see, we crammed it in here differently. Reverend Karen will be speaking on our practices that we teach in unity of prayer, meditation, affirmation, denial. And then on the last week, Jean Marie's going to bring it home for us with talking about the 5th principle that we teach in unity, which is none of this matters if we don't actually do it. We have to actually live it into our lives to experience the benefit of this teaching. So today, we're talking about principles 1 and 2. Let me just go ahead and read those to you. There are several iterations of these principles, the way they're stated. And I want to say that these were not created in this form by our founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, or by Emily Cady. Rather, they were sort of gleaned later. It was Charles's granddaughter, her name just slipped my mind, Connie Fillmore, who actually was a minister in our movement. She's the one that in the 80s sort of synthesized the teaching into the most basic concepts. But principle 1 is God is absolute good, everywhere present. And principle 2, Since humans are in the image of God, they are a spark of divinity. They have a spark of divinity within them and are therefore inherently good also. These are our basic beliefs. God is everywhere present and good, including in us, in all people. We are a Christian tradition, and these two principles speak to the ways that we differ from the vast majority of the way Christianity is taught and practiced. We believe that God is non-dual, and we believe in non-exclusionary religion. So, in other words, there's only one presence. In the Eastern traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism, this non-dual reality is the way they understand it as well. And so I've often said that we are a Christian tradition with a Hindu soul, or a Buddhist soul. In the Western traditions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, it's the worldview there is dualistic, that God is good, the spiritual reality is one place, and then the earthly reality, the physical reality, is somehow fallen, less than, separate. And bridging the gulf between the mortal and the divine is challenging. And then, of course, there's the materialist view, which is that there is no spiritual reality. It's all just atoms and quarks bumping against each other. Well, choose what you will, because we teach that God is everywhere, right? So you can be in any faith practice. We teach that there is truth being taught. As a matter of fact, Charles Fillmore and Ernest Holmes and others, the founders of the New Thought tradition, they did study other world religions, and they found what they called the perennial truth, that golden thread that unites all faith practices, some way that we're trying to get to the same place. And in our teaching, it simply doesn't work philosophically to think of God as being separate, as God is somehow creating the world and then removing his presence or his power or his love. And so there must be another way into understanding reality. This morning, actually, I found, well, I've known the quote by Albert Einstein for quite a while, but I found a little bit more information about it I want to share with you. You may have heard this quote from Einstein. He said, "The most important question you can ever ask is the world a friendly place?" And he's a great scientist, a physicist. He went on later in an interview to explain the meaning behind the quote. And here's what he said. "For if we decide that the universe is an unfriendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to achieve safety and power by creating bigger walls to keep out the unfriendliness, and bigger weapons to destroy all that which is unfriendly. And I believe that we are getting to a place where technology is powerful enough that we may either completely isolate or destroy ourselves in this process." He said, "If instead we decide that the universe is neither friendly nor unfriendly, that God is essentially playing dice with the universe, then we are simply victims to the random toss of the dice, and our lives have no real purpose or meaning. But if we decide that the universe is a friendly place, then we will use our technology, our scientific discoveries, and our natural resources to create tools and models for understanding that universe, because power and safety will come through the understanding of its workings and its motives." This is the most important thing that we teach. It's what our name means, unity, that we are one with God and each other. Because, as Albert Einstein said, if we don't believe that the universe is friendly, that there is a goodness in this one life, this one thing. Universe, I've heard a teacher say that it means one song, universe. That there is one thing happening. If we don't believe that it's good, then we will not behave as though it's good, and we would treat other people and we would treat the earth differently. But in unity, we have this deep understanding that there is one presence, one life. A friend of mine who wrote a song, it's Melissa Felipe, she wrote this song called "There Is Only One of Us." There is only one of us, and that which I do to others, I receive in my own experience. One presence. That's all there is. God is all there is. And when we have this understanding, it changes the way we approach the experience of our life. Because when we go through something that's difficult, as we all do, the temptation is to say, God has left me. And there is something that makes more sense about a dualistic worldview. I'm not going to lie to you. Because it would be so easy to see all the good stuff and then all the not good stuff and go, oh, God is only there. That's easier. Makes more sense. And so that's actually how the philosophical worldview of dualism came to be. It just makes sense. As does having a flat earth, as does having a great dome over our planet that has little pinpricks in it where the light comes through. All of that makes sense. But we are an evolutionary teaching. We have come to glean the truth from all the traditions and say we have rejected the idea that God could ever separate his presence and his power from reality. That instead, and if you really think into it, what did God use to make everything? Was there other stuff always that preceded God? Was God born? Was God created by a previous God? It doesn't make sense. And that's our anthropomorphizing mind. We want to make God still into a being with arms and legs and personalities and likes and dislikes. And what we teach in Unity, that God is a presence, a power. Has anybody seen Star Wars? It's like that. There is this energy that is everything, that reveals itself in form and in thought and in every realm. And it's one thing, and it's good. And which brings us to the second principle, that because God is present everywhere, could never withdraw, could never withhold or separate, that therefore every being, all people, are God in form. Our expressions of God's own desire and creative impulse are the presence themselves revealed and are therefore what? Good. And this is where I go, really? Look around. And again, I tell you that this teaching, well, when we're singing the peace song and we're holding hands, it makes a lot of sense and it feels good. We're all one, great. And then you see people acting crazy in the world, doing things that you find to be reprehensible and abhorrent. Then not so easy to go, we're all one. Not so easy. So what is that? Why do we have this seemingly dual experience of like there's good and there's bad? The way I've come to understand it, it's not duality, it's polarity. That there is the infinite potentiality of God, the mind of God that is complete and whole in every aspect, but as it reveals itself in the time, space, form continuum, we come here to experience contrast. So we can discover God anew in every moment, in every breath, in every experience, in every relationship, in every church service, hopefully. That we can find God, and we do that through contrast of up, down, cold, hot, good, bad. So we get asked this question a lot. Do we believe in evil? Yes, clearly. Look at what humans have done to humans in our world, and it's easy to see that evil exists. But where does it come from? Do we believe there's a power for evil? No. But we have this thing called choice. And we can choose to live the truth of the indwelling presence of God, that is who and what we are. It's our inheritance from God. Or we can choose to live from a thought of separation. And when people choose to live from separation and againstness, it gets crazy. And so our work, and it is work, because there's a few people that, I would sometimes just sort of like to exclude from the oneness of God. True, why are you doing that? I can't. My commitment is to practice unity principles. And my job is to see the Christ mind in them too. They have forgotten. They have followed a false teaching and a false feeling of separation and againstness. I will not follow the same path. Jesus was so clear. Jesus was not Christian. Y'all know that, right? You know that? Yeah. Jesus was Jewish. Was a respected, if kind of outside-the-box thinker, Jewish teacher, a rabbi. And he went around, and I believe that he was a non-dual teacher, and you can see it, particularly in the Sermon on the Mount, which is the most we think, coherent heart of his teaching. And he said this, "Judge not, lest you be judged. The same measure you judge others, it will be used to judge you." Why would you try and remove the speck from your brother's eye when you've got a log in your own? What Jesus was saying there is that when we judge others, we have put ourselves into that separate, distancing, disconnected mindset. They're not good. But we have bought right into the good and not good, the God and not God. That's why Jesus told us, don't do it. I know why we judge. We judge because it's fun. I have a friend who says that I don't judge, what I do is observe with disdain. Isn't that great? As a matter of fact, one of my best friends, she and I went to ministerial school together, and we're both sober a long time in recovery. And she's like, it's really unfair that we don't get to have happy hour. She said, I think we should just have judgment hour. just have a chance just to judge people and just let that be our indulgence. And it's easy and it's fun, but it doesn't work. You know why? I love that passage about trying to remove the speck in your brother's eyes. Do you know why? That someone who has a log in their own eye sees the specks? Because everything they're looking at looks like wood. Because they got a big log in their eye. Your belief system will confirm for you what you're wanting to see because you're seeing through your own lens of belief. And it's, sometimes I just wish it was their fault. That would make it so much easier, but it never is. Doesn't mean that we don't enact laws for justice and fair treatment. We do, and it's important. But we do so from a consciousness of oneness and not separation. This is important. That we recognize that we are all one and that we're all part of this infinite good that we call God. And here I want to give you a story that will explain, for me, kind of bring it home of why it's important that we do it this way. A friend of mine was part of an evangelical church in Michigan, and they took a mission trip to India, and they were doing really good work helping young women get out of the sex trade. And while they were there, they visited Mother Teresa's work. And she has passed, of course, but it's this beautiful Catholic ministry in the midst of the poorest Hindu section of Calcutta. And part of their the tradition in that work is they only attend to the physical and sort of emotional well-being of the people they serve. They do not convert them to Christianity. And my friend in her group, as they were traveling there, some of the people in her group said, well, that seems kind of wrong. They're going to let those people go to hell. And which led to a further conversation of, was Mother Teresa really saved? And my friend, who was a part of that was one of the indicators that she was in the wrong church. Because for her, and for me too, Mother Teresa, if there's anyone that exemplifies Christ-likeness, a woman who dedicated her life to love and to care. But if we're not careful, if we get into that us and them thinking, we can condemn a whole lot of people. When what we're being called to do instead is to love them into oneness. Mahatma Gandhi, when he was assassinated, turned to his assassin and said, Namaste. Which, if you don't know what that means, it means the indwelling presence of God in me recognizes and honors the same in you. That's what we're called to. Despite conditions, to see oneness in each other. For my own, I had a spiritual deconstruction that happened for me when I was 19. Some of you know this story, but I was at Oral Roberts University, and I was a believer in that heaven and hell and, the good and the bad and God and not God. That's how I was taught, and it made sense. And then one day I started thinking about a loving God creating billions and billions of people over all time and sending most of them to an eternal punishment because they hadn't said the sinner's prayer and accepted Jesus into their heart. Jesus didn't accept this. He didn't accept himself into his own heart, did he? I don't know. Maybe he did. But the point is, I just suddenly thought, this doesn't make sense to me in a different way. I can't believe that love would exclude. And it was like pulling the thread on a sweater. So many of the teachings of separation began to fall apart. And I was lost for about 10 years, really. Just I didn't know what I believed. I believed in God, and I believed in love. And then it was, I began to find, I think it was I went to a Marianne Williamson lecture, and then I was actually found by a New Thought church, and I began to study these teachings, and they felt right to my soul. Sometimes we think we're doing the right thing, we're going the right way, but there's something else that God has in mind for us. On Wednesday night, Jean Marie spoke beautifully before our White Stone ceremony, and one of the stories she told about God having an encounter with the divine and getting a new name was Saul of Tarsus. Saul was on the road to Damascus. He was a part of the Sanhedrin. He was a part of the Jewish law police who wanted to make sure to keep the religion pure, and he would weed out those who were the heretics. And these followers of Jesus, after Jesus left the earth, they were causing quite a row. And he went out seeking them out, trying to arrest them. As a matter of fact, he thought they should be executed. And so while he was on the road to Damascus to do this work, something happened. See, Saul did not see God in everyone. He sincerely believed that the followers of the Jesus way were in error, and it was his important job to correct them. And he was struck blind on the road to Damascus. And for 3 days, he couldn't see, and he also didn't drink, and he didn't eat. There was a voice that came to him and said, "Saul, why do you persecute me?" as the story comes to us. And he said, "Who are you?" And the voice said, "I am Jesus, whom you persecute." He had an encounter with the divine. He was told to go to the house of Ananias, and there he received prayer. Something like scales fell from his eyes, and he saw the world differently, and he had a 180-degree turn. And he began to actually teach what Jesus taught. And I will tell you this, I disagree with the man a lot. He says women should keep silent in the church. How do you think that would work here? 75% of our ministers are women. Yeah, we're not Paulinians. We are Christians. We follow what Jesus taught, not what was taught about him in creating the church. But I will tell you, if it weren't for Paul, there would be no teaching of Jesus surviving into this age. He created the organization, the structure. He made the religion. So I'm thankful that he had that 180-degree turnaround. Some of you have had a similar Damascus Road experience. I'm not saying that you were out to do evil or to harm someone, but you had an idea about where life was going, what you were being called to, what was happening, and something else came instead. That divorce, the death, the loss of the job, the bankruptcy. And you found that you couldn't see what life meant anymore. The things that you thought you could count on, they're gone. Barbara Brown Taylor is an amazing preacher and author. She's an Episcopal priest, and she writes beautifully in her book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, about the power of these dark moments. She calls to mind another story in the Old Testament or in the Hebrew Bible when the children of Israel were being led in the wilderness by a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. And she tells us in her book and in her sermon that we think that God is light and only found in the light, but what we've just been talking about in unity is God is present where? Everywhere. Even in those dark times. And she says this, "It will never sell, I know that. Endarkment is never going to appeal to anyone the way enlightenment does. Well, except maybe to people who are already sitting in the dark, thinking they've done something wrong, thinking that God has abandoned them, that they have lost their way and may never find it again. To hear the gospel that God dwells in the darkness too might just save them on the spot, along with any of us who are listening in, because if we haven't already been there, we will be by and by. No one who follows Jesus gets a rain check. No one who is human gets to bypass the dark cloud. But here's the thing about that dark cloud of unknowing, which even the saints take on trust. It's not there to get through like a test or a fever. It is God's home. The presence of God is there. It is the place where God dwells. To be invited in is a great honor, and to stay a while, better yet. Those who come out can be hard to look at first. Where did all that brightness come from inside that dark cloud? And they may not have a lot of words to describe where they've been, but even the limping ones will tell you this: they would not have chosen it, not for a million years. But now that it's happened, they would never give it back. I've been talking since my first Sunday as senior minister back in September that I can feel the energy of rebirth and regeneration. Something is happening here in this community. And I recognize that some in this community are struggling and feel alone. And the work of us who are not there, well, the work of you who are there, is to remember our deepest teaching. God is with you and within you. Even though it feels like you're alone, it may seem like it makes sense that you're alone, you're not. And those of us who are not in that dark cloud of unknowing, do you know what our work is right now? Is to put our arms around them and to hold them and to listen and remind them that even now, you're amazing. Something is happening. I love you. Thank you for giving me this honor. You are amazing. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.